The free association game has been played for centuries. It requires only a stimulus, a referee, and a player who is willing to follow the simple rule, say the first thing that comes to mind when the stimulus is presented to you. When the game is further restricted to single words as both stimuli and responses, it is more properly called the word association game. Unlike conversation or the other language games we play daily, the word association game is an artificial, derivative phenomenon, important not because it is interesting in itself, but because it reveals properties of linguistic mechanisms underlying it. Our ability to produce associations is presumably derived from our ability to understand and produce language. For this reason, language must play a central role in the explanation of these associations. Word associations have not always been thought of in this way, and even now most psychologists treat word association in the way that British empiricists have done for several centuries. For these psychologists, two words become associated with each other when the two are experienced in temporal contiguity. Quite recently, however, this simple, hence attractive theory has been severely criticized for a variety of reasons. Chomsky, 1959, McNeill, 1966, Clifton, 1967. Most important among these reasons is that association theory cannot account for language comprehension and production. Language, the critics say, should not be thought of as a consequence of built-up associations. Rather, word associations should be thought of as a consequence of linguistic competence. Word associations have characteristically different effects depending on the rules the player has followed. When the player is allowed to take his time, he generally reacts with rich images, memories, or exotic verbal associations, and these give way to idiosyncratic, often personally revealing, one-word responses. But when he is urged to respond quickly, his associations become more superficial, less idiosyncratic, and more closely related in an obvious way to the stimulus. These responses are much more predictable in that they are the ones almost everyone else gives to the stimulus. But if he has to respond even more quickly, the player will ignore even the meaning of the stimulus and produce clang responses, words that sound like or rhyme with the stimulus. Of these three categories, it is the second that is most dependent on linguistic competence. But there are important differences even among these fast, meaningful responses. The common associations, i.e., the responses other people are most likely to give, are produced more quickly than the uncommon ones. This suggests that we can attach greater importance to the fastest, most frequent associations, for hypothetically they are the product of the basic association mechanisms. Even the most preliminary analysis of the word association game reveals its kinship with language comprehension and production. The game has three identifiable stages. 1. The player must understand the stimulus. 2. He must operate on the meaning of the stimulus. And 3. He must produce a response. It is the unique second stage that clearly sets this game apart from normal language mechanisms. It contains an associating mechanism which, through its associating rules, fixes the response at the third stage. I will go into these associating rules in some detail, but only after examining what is known about understanding and producing sentences, the counterparts of the first and third stages in word association. According to one current linguistic theory, Katz and Fodor, 1963, Katz and Postal, 1964, Chomsky, 1965. The meaning of a sentence consists essentially of its deep structure relations plus the dictionary entries of the lexical items inserted into this deep structure. There also is some psychological evidence to suggest that comprehension involves coming to know the deep structure evidence to suggest that comprehension involves...